Subdivision of the 6/8 measure. The 6/8 bar. There are countries or conductors that mark in a different way as we do it in this technique. The 6/8 bar. There are many individuals with different techniques that mark this type of bar perfectly well as well. But the origin of the 6/8 bar is like a subdivided cross, of which 2 pulses are taken. A 4/4 bar subdivided are 8. Take away 2, you are left with 6, and we do.
Y hacemos 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Le quitamos
We take away 2. Which ones do we take away? In principle, the weak beats. We do.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6.
This is what works best, from the point of view of the anatomy of the music. But in this technique, we have 6 distinct ways to be able to conduct a 6/8 bar, as is explained in the book. And which one should we choose? Whichever one that goes better with the music we are conducting, that better reflects the changes of the harmony, the changes in the melody, etc., etc. We can do 6 distinct combinations, and this doesn't mean we have to always do it this way, with the same 6/8 basic figure. Those that conduct a 6/8 bar marking
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6
are completely wrong from an anatomical point of view, unless it was a music especially made to be conducted in this way. Then maybe it would go well, reflecting what the music does. But usually, in this way, it doesn't work. Because, in this way, there are 3 pulses in the same direction and 3 pulses in 3 different directions, which is completely unbalanced. On the other hand, the 4th beat is an introverted gesture, when it is generally a pulse, strong, heavy, that has weight, and should be extroverted.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6.
Subdivision of the 9/8 and 12/8 measures. In 9/8 and 12/8 measures, marking in this technique with an 8th note pulse, which is to say, subdividing them, there is a peculiarity that is advisable to explain separately. The 9/8 measure logically comes from the triangle. We subdivide 2 times every pulse.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And in this technique, instead of doing,
7, 8, 9, que es,
which is an uncomfortable gesture, and which is an inward motion, which is not clear, we make a small triangle in the last subdivided beat, whereby it would be correct in this way.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And the same happens with the 12/8 measure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Subdivision on the way. This is a gestural mark that is done in the path between one beat and another, from one essential point of the basic figure to another, or from one change of pulse to another. Assuming we are subdividing, it as well can be done within the subdivisions, because we have to reflect something that occurs in that very moment. It consists in a contraction of the muscles to indicate when something happens that we want to demonstrate. Subdivision on the way can be done in half beats, or thirds of beats. If the content, rhythmical and musical, of the pulse is in 3, there could be something important that we would want to demonstrate in the third motor unit of this pulse.
Un, dos, tres, un, dos, tres, un, dos, tres, un, dos, tres, un.
And don't subdivide in the subdivision on the way, but in the path between one pulse and another. If I mark the cross, and I want to demonstrate something within the subdivision, I would do But if I do it in the trajectory, not subdivided, and I do this muscle contraction in the arms to indicate something that happens in the music. If I was doing a 3/4 bar,
1, 2, 3, 1, y, 1, y, 1, y, 1, y, 1, y, 1, y.
Or if I was beating in 1, but I can do it in thirds. As you can see, this can be done with all the basic figures, which is the subdivision on the way, which is a gesture that happens in the exact moment when the musical event that we want to show happens. Scatto. When going to mark the first upbeat to start a work, many mistakes can be made. There is one that is very common, which is to do an upbeat to the upbeat. If we start from the understanding that any starting movement of the conductor is an upbeat, if before I mark a normal upbeat, I did this outwards movement I made over here to later mark the upbeat, this is an upbeat to an upbeat. I have to start completely as a petrified statue. I have not done any previous movement, because this is what we call an upbeat to the upbeat. For this, there is a very important exercise that I learned with Maestro Celibidache. That is scatto, scattare. In Italian, means to sprint off violently. Boom! So, we put ourselves in the initial position and we start in 1, and do this, leaving the arms dead after the initial impulse. Leaving the arms dead, controlling the weight of the arm, and each time stronger. The stronger we go downward, the higher the arm goes, and they fall completely relaxed. And this exercise is wonderful to evade doing an upbeat to the upbeat, because it's done in this way. Upbeats: normal, metric, and virtuosistic. Music can start in any part of a measure. This is to the taste of the composer. Accordingly, when we put ourselves in the initial position, this point, where we find ourselves, can be any point of the measure, any pulse, within any basic figure, or any subdivision. If I am like this, I can move upwards to mark beat 1, move downward to mark beat 2, I can move to the left to mark beat 3, or I can go towards the right to mark beat 4. And always, in any case, one can use the optic reference. I am going to do the four possibilities, so you can see the fact that wherever the music starts within the measure does not change in relation to the initial position.
No cambia en relación a la posición inicial.
We have the normal upbeat, the metric upbeat, and the virtuosistic upbeat, in Maestro Celibidache's technique. The normal upbeat is one that gives reference of musical character, tempo, and dynamic. The three causes, the three important things that a musician needs to know to be able to play. The metric upbeat only gives tempo. This is why it's called metric. And the virtuosistic upbeat does not give anything. It's a warning. It's a movement that doesn't reflect anything, but all the information will be given in the effective beat, when the pulse starts, where the silence is, as the metric and the virtuosistic upbeats are always used in music that starts on an offbeat. When the music starts on the pulse, on the beat, at the beginning of the pulse, this is when we use the normal upbeat. Let's see the normal upbeat.
Veamos la anacruza normal.
Metric upbeat. Virtuosistic upbeat. Dynamic upbeat. After having explained the normal metric and virtuosistic upbeats, I will have to explain another kind of upbeat, which is what we call a dynamic upbeat. If the metric upbeat only reflected the tempo and the virtuosistic upbeat didn't reflect anything, the dynamic upbeat is called this way because it only reflects the dynamic, the volume, if it's forte or piano. This type of upbeat is never done when starting work or when starting a rehearsal. Or to use after a break in a rehearsal. It is always used or will be used throughout the progress of the music. One example of a dynamic upbeat we can find, as is in the book, in the Second Symphony of Beethoven, in the Scherzo, where there is a measure that is forte and one that is piano, one that is forte and one that is piano. If the conductor has to always anticipate one unit of pulse beforehand, what will happen is when it is piano, he will be marking forte, and when it is forte, he will be marking piano, whereby it will give the sensation that I have made a mistake, or it will look like I am lost. So, this will be fixed with the dynamic upbeat, which consists in, after giving the forte pulse, move with a small movement and after the small movement, throw another forte movement, a large movement, so that it will be forte. This produces this.
Pam, pipa, pam, pipa, pip, pipa, 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 pa, 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 pam, pipa, pa, pam, pipa, pa.
This is what we call the dynamic upbeat.
Dinámica.
Upbeats for dispari measures. In dispari measures, the conductor has to mark the upbeat with the shortest pulse, and always with 2 moto units. In this way, it is extremely easy to understand the velocity, no matter where you are in the world. In Japan, in Korea, in Argentina, in South Africa, it doesn't matter where. If you mark an upbeat of 2 motor units for a dispari measure, and everyone will understand you because the tendency of a musician is to get the smallest beats. In this way, if I had an example, a 10/8 bar, the upbeat has to be a unit of 2 eighths. If it's legato, it would be a 1-to-1 proportion. And if it's staccato, upbeats with dispari. Then there are works that, to begin them, that start with a ternary rhythm that could be a 6/8 measure. And the music begins in the last eighth note. So if you do, especially in tempos lentos, if we do, for example, the overture of Arriaga, The Happy Slaves, it is very difficult to understand where one should start to play. So if I do a dispari and I do, I am already giving the velocity of the eighth note, and everyone will understand perfectly. Upbeats in changes of tempo. Fermatas. The exercises that I'm going to do now are practical exercises for every single type, from the commandments of fermata of Sergiu, Celibidache's technique. I'm going to do a series of examples in which all types are shown or represented. And so, it's as they have to be. One will never find music where there might be so many different types of fermatos in so few bars, but is simply an exercise so you can see how one solves the problems of fermatas.